The galaxy is a tapestry of horrors sewn with the thread of unending war. Humanity stands as a lone bastion, an island empire of 1,000,000 worlds, besieged by an ocean of malice. This is the Imperium of man. It endures not through strength, nor through wisdom, but through ignorance. It is a structure built upon a foundation of faith so brittle that a single undeniable truth could shatter it into ruin. Against the darkness there are the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, the Angels of Death. They are the Emperor's wrath made manifest icons of hope and defiance. Their deeds are legend, their victories sung in the choirs of every cathedral world. They are the glorious shining lie that holds the Imperium together. But there is another war fought in the suffocating shadows between worlds, in the dead silence of void reefs and the quarantined ruins of worlds long since purged. This is a war without honor, without song, and without end. This is the war fought by the Deathwatch. They are the militant arm of the Ordo Xenos, the shield that guards the Imperium, not from the alien, but from the knowledge of the alien. They are the grim truth. They are the wall of black shields that stands between the fragile psyche of mankind and the abyssal horrors that seek to devour it. This is the first secret: the Imperium is not winning. It is not locked in a noble stalemate. It is losing. It is dying a death of 1,000 billion cuts, and every world that falls, every populace consumed, every fleet annihilated is a secret the Deathwatch must keep. The common citizen of the Imperium believes the Xenos to be a foul, degenerate thing, a beast to be purged. They cannot be allowed to know the truth. They cannot know of the tyrannid hive mind, a singular consciousness of such terrifying scale that it dwarfs the comprehension of entire sectors, an entity that sees entire planets as mere biomass, a passing meal. They cannot know of the Necrons, an empire of soulless machines that ruled the galaxy for 60 million years, whose technology borders on the divine, and who are awakening from their slumber not to conquer, but to reclaim what they already own. To know this is to know despair. To know this is to invite madness. The Black Shield does not just stop a Genestealer's claw, it stops the idea of the Genestealer from spreading the corrupting knowledge that a foe exists which can wear a human face, infiltrate society, and turn brother against brother from within. The truth would break the Imperium. The truth is heresy. Therefore, those who are chosen to fight this war are not honored. They are condemned. When the call comes, it is not an invitation. It is a tithe, a demand. An inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos arrives at a chapter's fortress monastery and demands their finest. A chapter master lord of 1,000 warriors cannot refuse. To be selected is to be exiled. It is a cold, quiet pronouncement of a life sentence. This is the long vigil. It is not a tour of duty. It is not a rotation. It is a vow that ends only in death. The moment a Marine accepts the vigil, his old life is over. He surrenders his chapter colors. The proud ultramarine blue, the righteous fury of the Blood Angels crimson, the stoic iron of the Gorgons' sons, all of it is scoured away, burned off by acid and oath, replaced by the matte, non-reflective black of the grave. He surrenders his name, his lineage, his personal heraldry. He becomes a function, a tool sharpened for a single, terrible purpose. His only family is now the collection of other exiles who stand beside him, warriors from chapters that may have been rivals, even enemies for millennia. Now they are brothers in shadow. To become a Deathwatch Marine is not an ascension. It is a deconstruction. It is a painful, brutal reforging. The chapter's dogma, the sacred teachings of the Codex Astartes, the comfortable doctrines that have guided a warrior for a century, they are the first things to be broken. The Deathwatch does not fight the wars of the Codex. They fight wars of desperation, of infiltration, of assassination. They fight where tactical withdrawal is not an option, and where victory is measured not in territory gained, but in secrets kept. They will teach you to fight dirty. They will teach you to set traps, to poison, to execute the compromised. they will teach you the forbidden. You will learn to study the Xenos, to dissect its flesh, to understand its profane language, to wield its abhorrent weaponry. You will be forced to internalize the very knowledge you are sworn to destroy, to let the taint brush your mind so that you may better recognize it in others. This too is part of the burden. To use the unclean to protect the pure and to be forever scarred by the contact. There is no glory in this. There are no songs. There are no monuments to the fallen of Watch Fortress Eriok or Talasa Prime. There is only the mission. There is only the unending, thankless, and eternal battle against the dark. This is the oath. This is the sacrifice. Hunt, kill, endure. The air in the Hall of Victories was still heavy with the scent of consecrated oils and the cold eternity of marble. Banners of Ultramar's countless campaigns hung from the vaulted ceiling, each a testament to meticulous strategy and righteous war. This was the fortress of Hera, the heart of Macragge, a place of logic, order, and unshakable honor. Brother Sergeant Kalen stood at parade rest, his blue lacquered power armor, a mirror reflecting the hall's solemn grandeur. He was second company, an exemplar of the Codex Astartes, a warrior whose mind was as honed as his bolt gun. He was here as part of the honor guard for his chapter master, who was receiving an unscheduled envoy. The envoy had not been announced by the fleet command. His ship, a void black cruiser devoid of any chapter markings or Imperial Navy, Aquila had simply appeared in high-orbit broadcasting codes of such high authority that the system defense grid had been forced to stand down its machine spirits screaming in protest. Now the envoy stood before the chapter master's dais. He was not an Astartes. He was a man frail by comparison, yet he commanded the space around him with a chilling gravity. He wore the black carapace of the Inquisition, his face a web of augmetic implants and pale scars. A single stylized eye was burned onto the servo skull that hovered silently by his shoulder. Lord, the Inquisitor's voice was dry like rustling parchment. The Ordo Xenos has reviewed your sector's compliance. The tithe is due. The chapter master, a giant even among his kin, rested his gauntleted fists on the arms of his throne. His voice was the rumble of distant thunder. Inquisitor. The Ultramarines have given more than any in this age. My companies are bled thin on the eastern fringe. The Tyranid threat is not abated. We have no warriors to spare. The Inquisitor Varus did not blink. We do not ask for what is spared. We demand what is owed. The long vigil does not concern itself with the ebb and flow of conventional warfare. It concerns itself with the abyss that seeks to swallow your precious conventional war whole. He produced a data slate. The tithe is one. A specialist. The chapter master leaned forward. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. You come to the very heart of Ultramar to poach one of my veterans. I come to collect an asset, Varus corrected, his voice sharp. An asset whose recent experiences are particular. The Ordo has need of warriors familiar with the new strains of Hive Fleet Leviathan, those who have seen firsthand the failure of standard doctrine. A cold dread settled in Kalen's gut. He had commanded the line on Ajax. He had seen things that did not align with the tactical summaries. He had seen lictors move with a predictive intelligence that suggested a guiding hand far closer than any synapse creature. He had reported it. His report had been classified. Varus's gaze, one organic eye and one cold blue lens, slid past the chapter master and locked onto Kalen. Brother Sergeant Kalen, 2nd Company, exemplar of the Codex, survivor of the Ajax Purge. Your tactical acumen is noted. The Inquisitor's words felt like an accusation. The Ordo Xenos requires your service. Kalen felt the eyes of his battle brothers on him. This was not an honor. There was no proclamation, no celebratory feast. It was a sentence. The chapter master's face was a mask of granite, but Kalen could see the fury in his clenched jaw. He was being taken, requisitioned like a crate of ammunition. Inquisitor, the chapter master said, his voice dangerously low. You would take one of my finest sergeants, a man who embodies the very teachings of Guilliman. He is a beacon of order. What use can you have for him?" Varus allowed himself a thin, chilling smile. "You mistake our purpose, Lord. We do not seek beacons, we seek blades." And those who are too rigid, he paused, his gaze still fixed on Kalen, are the most satisfying to reforge. His adherence to the rules is precisely why he is chosen. He knows why he fights. Soon he will learn how he must fight. The Inquisitor turned. He has 1 hour to divest himself of his loyalties. My shuttle awaits. The chapter master did not move. He did not speak. He simply inclined his head, a gesture of submission, so profound and so full of constrained anger that it hurt Kalen more than any blow. The Inquisitor had won. The full might of a first founding chapter was powerless against this single dry man and the authority he represented. The farewell was not in the Hall of Victories. It was in the cold, functional atmosphere of Departure Bay Tertius, a place reserved for servitors and cargo loaders. Kalen stood in simple fatigues, his skin bare, his power armor already being consecrated and reclaimed by the chapter's tech marines. His chapter master stood before him alone. The pomp was gone. There was only the duty. Wordlessly, Kalen unhooked his personal sigil, the small, blessed parchment bearing his name and deeds, and handed it to the massive warrior. Then he unclasped the icon of Ultramar from his shoulder guard, the symbol he had worn with pride for over a century. He placed it in his lord's open palm. "I have served," Macragga Kalen stated. His voice was firm, though his 2 hearts beat a funeral dirge. "You have served the Emperor," the chapter master replied, his voice softer, now tinged with a deep, cold sorrow. "And you will continue to serve him in the shadows that we are forbidden to enter." "Am I exiled, my lord?" "You are tithed," the chapter master said, closing his hand around the symbols. "Your name will be struck from the active roster and moved to the chapel of the vigil. You will not be forgotten by us, Kalen. But you must forget. Forget Macragga. Forget the Codex. Forget the clear light of day. Forget the honor of the open field. Whatever they ask of you, whatever they force you to become, endure it. That is your new duty." Kalen straightened his drill sergeant posture, returning for a final moment. Courage and honor. The chapter master looked at him, a flicker of pride warring with the cold reality. He did not return the traditional salute. He offered only the final chilling benediction. "The Emperor protects." It was a dismissal. Kalen nodded once, turned his back on the blue banners, the marble halls, and the only home he had ever known. He walked up the ramp of the black inquisitorial shuttle. The door hissed shut, sealing him in darkness. He was no longer Kalen of the Ultramarines. He was a resource. He was property. The shuttle's ramp opened not onto a bustling hangar, but into a cavern of cold, pressurized silence. The docking bay of the Deathwatch cruiser, the Silent Vigil, was a void. Its decks were not gray steel, but polished black obsidian, reflecting the sparse ice-blue lumen strips that lined the bulkheads. The air did not thrum with the familiar, robust vibration of a warship's plasma heart. It hissed with the low, steady hum of a dormant predator. Kalen stepped out, his heavy boots the only sound in the cavernous space. No deck crews shouted commands. No weapon servitors trundled by with ordnance. A single figure, robed in the black of the inquisitorial stormtrooper, but wearing no helmet, stood waiting. The acolyte's face was blank, his eyes vat-grown and milky. He did not speak. He simply raised a hand, gestured, and turned. Kalen followed. The corridors of the vigil were tunnels of profound wrongness. They were built to Astartes' scale, yet they felt constricting. The walls were unadorned. Where the glorious double-headed Imperial Aquila should have been mounted in honor, there was only a blank, scarred plate of steel, as if the symbol had been violently torn away. In its place, repeated at every junction, was the sigil of his new masters, the stylized eye of the Inquisition, and beside it the symbol that made his blood run cold, the Deathwatch icon. A skull stark and white, crushing the skull of an unseen Xenos. It was not a symbol of liberation or glory. It was a symbol of extermination, He passed servitors, but they were not the loud, clanking machines of the Adeptus Mechanicus he knew. These were sleek, multi-limbed things that glided rather than walked, their red optical lenses tracking him without a sound. The few human crew he glimpsed were equally silent. Their faces masked, their bodies wrapped in dark, void suits, communicating in a rapid, complex sign language that he could not decipher. This ship was not merely quiet. It was muted, a place where the spoken word was an intrusion. The acolyte led him to a heavy bulkhead, and again, without a word, gestured for him to enter. The door hissed open, revealing a small, austere briefing room, empty save for a single metal bench bolted to the floor. 3 other space marines were already there. They were not his brothers. The first, clad in the ravaged crimson fatigues of a blood angel, sat bolt upright, his hands clenched on his knees. His face was a mask of angelic nobility, but a single muscle in his jaw twitched in a frantic, ceaseless rhythm. His eyes were closed as if in prayer, but Kalen could see the strain, the desperate, white-knuckled containment of a fury that screamed to be unleashed. He was not at peace. He was in a cage of his own making. The second, a space wolf, was the antithesis of the blood angel. He was a mountain of restless energy pacing the small cell in short, aggressive strides. His hair was a wild gray mane, his face a roadmap of scars, and he radiated a musky animal scent of anger and confinement. He shot Kalen a look of open contempt, his lip curling back to reveal elongated canines. The third sat on the bench perfectly still. His flesh was pale, but his left arm and much of his torso were gleaming polished metal. An iron hand. He was dispassionately examining the firing mechanism of his own bolt pistol, ignoring the others entirely. His cold, logical presence was almost as unsettling as the wolf's aggression. Kalen, ever the ultramarine, sought to impose order on the chaos. He planted his feet and addressed the room. "Brothers, I am Sergeant Kalen of the Ultramarine's 2nd Company." The pacing wolf stopped. He let out a short, harsh bark of a laugh. "Sergeant," he growled, his voice thick with the accent of Fenris. "Your rank means slag here, little Lord of Macragge, and we ain't brothers." He jabbed a thumb at the still iron hand. "You think I'm brother to that chunk of scrap?" The iron hand did not look up, his voice a dry, emotionless monotone. "The wolf's assessment is accurate. Chapter designations are inefficient variables. They are irrelevant." Kalen's attempt at protocol had shattered. There was no brotherhood here, only the ancient simmering resentments of 1,000 years of divergent doctrines. The suspicion was so thick it was suffocating. Before he could reply, a jarring lurch threw them all off balance. A deep, agonizing groan resonated through the very bones of the ship, a sound of metal screaming as it was forced to tear a hole in reality. There was no 10-second countdown, no navigator's blessing broadcast over the Vox, just a violent, brutal transition. The ship plunged into the immaterium. Kalen's enhanced senses reeled. Warp travel was never pleasant, but this was different. The Geller field felt thin, fragile. The comforting psychic choir of the Astronomicon, the Emperor's light, that guided all of humanity felt impossibly distant. It was no longer a beacon of hope, but a single flickering candle seen from across a dark ocean. He felt the moment his connection to Macragge, the subtle psychic link that bound every son of Guilliman to his home, was severed. It was not a gentle fading. It was a sharp, painful snap. He was untethered. He was in a silent, hostile ship surrounded by warriors who despised him, heading to an unknown destination, and no one in the galaxy knew where he was. The acolyte had not taken his weapons. He had not been put in chains. They didn't need to. He was already a prisoner. Kalen was no longer a sergeant of the Ultramarines. He was a ghost. The journey through the Empyrean was mercifully short, but it felt like a lifetime of dislocation. The silent vigil tore its way back into real space with the same brutal indifference with which it had left. There was no grand vista of a star system, no inhabited world shining against the dark. There was only void, and floating within it a dagger aimed at the heart of nothingness. Watch Fortress Thalassa Prime. It was not a proud orbital plate like the starforts of the Imperial Navy. It was a jagged, ugly edifice of ancient rock and mismatched stolen architecture. Kalen saw the unmistakable lines of an Eldar spire, fused crudely to the spine of what might have been an Orc cruiser, all of it built around a core of ancient pre-imperial adamantium. The fortress bristled with weapon batteries of 100 different patterns, some archaic, some disturbingly alien. It did not shine. It absorbed the light, a vortex of black stone and mismatched metal hanging in the deep, starless dark. Their ship slid into a cavernous docking bay cut directly into the asteroid. The atmosphere was thin, cold, and heavy with the metallic tang of ozone, and something else, something rank and biological that Kalen's senses immediately tagged as Xenos taint. The place was a graveyard. As they were marched from the vigil into the fortress proper, the scale of the place became apparent. It was a museum of horrors, a monument to the enemy. The vast vaulted halls were not decorated with statues of imperial saints or primarchs. They were lined with trophies, but these were not the clean-mounted skulls Kalen was used to. To his right, the entire upper torso of a hive tyrant scales, glistening under the cold lumens, was suspended in a state of biostasis, its claws still dripping viscous fluid. To his left, a wrecked Necron Gauss flare was embedded in the wall, the stone around it still blackened and molecularly destabilized from its final terrifying discharge. Further on, a tattered banner of shimmering unfamiliar fabric depicted a complex alien rune, a captured banner of the toe. The message was clear: this was not a place of human glory. This was a place defined by its enemy. It was cold, it was alien, and it felt utterly unwelcoming. This was no fortress monastery. It was a tomb. They were herded into a vast octagonal chamber known as the Hall of the Vigil. At its center, a massive flickering hololith displayed a map of the sector, but it was corrupted, dotted with red markers that Kalen recognized as Xenos threat designators. There were too many. Far too many. A figure stood waiting for them, silhouetted against the crimson glow of the tactical display. He was an Astartes, but ancient, his movements stiff with the burden of centuries. He wore a modified suit of Terminator armor, painted the same matte black as the fortress itself, and his face was a tapestry of scars and service studs that seemed to cover every inch of available skin. His one visible eye was a milky white orb of scar tissue. The other was a complex multi-lensed augmetic that whirred faintly as it scanned each of them in turn. This was Watch Commander Aras, the Master of Thalassa Prime. When he spoke, his voice was a synthesized rasp, amplified by a vox grill that sounded like grinding stones. "You are the new tithe." It was not a welcome. It was a statement of fact, like a quartermaster reading a cargo manifest. "You will forget the names you carried here. You will forget the colors you wore. You will forget the petty doctrines that your ancient slumbering primarchs dictated in an age that is dead." The space wolf Fenrir bristled. "The Allfather's word is never." "Silence," Aras commanded. The word cut through the chamber, and Fenrir fell silent, his face contorted in a snarl. "Your Allfather is not here. Your Lion is not here. Your Gilliman is not here. They are legends, myths, and myths do not kill tyrannids. They do not stop Necrons from waking, and they do not burn out the insidious rot of a Genestealer cult." Aras stepped forward, his massive Terminator boots striking the deck like hammers. "Your chapter is dead to you. Your honor, your oaths, your rivalries, they are meaningless baggage, luxury you can no longer afford. Here you have only one family." He gestured to the dark walls around them. "The Deathwatch. You have only one purpose." He pointed a massive power fist at the red-drenched map. "The death of the alien. You are not here to be celebrated." He continued, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. "You are not the glorious heroes of the Imperium. You are the butchers, the inquisitors, the executioners who do the work no one else can do or will do. You are the surgeons who cut out the cancer even if it means killing the patient. Is that understood? No one spoke. The Blood Angel was trembling. The Iron Hand was impassive. Kalen felt a cold, hard knot of his ultramarine pride being crushed into dust. Gudaris rasped. Then your re-education begins. They were marched from the hall not to barracks, but to a place that felt like a chapel and a forge all in one. The Apocathecarian Armory. Here tech marines and apothecaries worked side by side in black robes, their movements precise and unnervingly silent. Kalen was ordered to strip off his blue fatigues, the last remnant of his old life. He and the others stood bare-chested, their transhuman physiology on display. Servitors approached carrying not war gear, but surgical tools and branding irons. The apothecary, his face hidden behind a skull helm, approached Kalen. The flesh is weak, the apothecary stated, his voice a metallic buzz. It must be reinforced. He was instructed to mount a heavy metal frame. Restraints snapped shut around his wrists, waist, and head. A multi-armed servitor descended, its tools spinning. Kalen did not flinch as the needles sank into his flesh, injecting pain blockers and sacred oils. Another servitor arm, this one equipped with a high-intensity laser, began to score patterns into his skin, burning away old campaign markings. Then came the armor. A tech marine approached bearing not the noble blue plate of Macragh, but pieces of matte black ceramite. They were heavier, reinforced with strange alloys Kalen did not recognize. One by one, the pieces were bolted on the machine spirit of the armor, interfacing with his black carapace with a cold, painful data spike. Finally, a servitor presented a single pauldron and arm guard. It was not black. It was gleaming, polished silver. The left arm. The tech marine began the ritual of affixing it. This was not the pauldron of a chapter which bore the insignia of his heritage. This was a shackle, a badge of office. The tech marine didn't just bolt it on, he sealed it, the bonding studs sinking deep and locking with a pneumatic finality. It felt heavier than the rest of the armor. Permanent. You are ultramarine, no longer the tech marine. Intoned, his voice devoid of emotion. You are Watch Brother. Your left arm, your shield arm, is pledged to the vigil. It will bear the insignia of the Deathwatch and the insignia of your lost chapter, so that you never forget the magnitude of what you have sacrificed. Kalen looked at the gleaming silver arm, so stark against the absolute black of his new armor. It was a constant reminder, a permanent brand. He raised his hand, clenching the silver gauntleted fist. It felt alien, wrong. He looked over. The Space Wolf was receiving his snarling as the silver was locked into place. The Blood Angel was deathly pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of dread and acceptance. The Iron Hand simply observed the new component being integrated into his body with detached analytical curiosity. Kalen had been stripped, marked, and remade. The blue was gone. The honor of Ultramar was gone. All that remained was a black suit of armor, a silver arm, and a single cold purpose. He had been erased. Their re-education began not in a sparring cage, but in a place that chilled Kalen to his very marrow, the Xenolexicon, a laboratory morgue deep in the fortress's core. The air was frigid, thick with the stench of chemical preservatives and the unmistakable oily reek of alien viscera. They stood before stainless steel tables, each bearing a biological horror. Before Kalen lay a tyrannid hormagaunt, its body cavity splayed open. Further down Fenrir, the Space Wolf stood over the dismembered torso of an orc. The Iron Hand, now known only as Ferrus, had been assigned a captured tow drone, and the Blood Angel Sangua was tasked with the lithe, disturbingly graceful corpse of an elder warrior. A Deathwatch apothecary, his black armor stained and scorched his face, hidden by the skull plate of his office, presided over the lesson. His servo arms, tipped with saws and scalpels, twitched with clinical eagerness. You have been taught that the alien is a beast, the apothecary's vox crackled. You have been taught to purge it with fire and chainsword. This is the blunt instrument of the Imperium. It is insufficient. The vigil requires precision. You must know your enemy, not just hate it. He gestured to Kalen's specimen. Brother Kalen. Ultramarine. You have fought Leviathan. Show me the primary synaptic node on this creature. Kalen, drawing on his battlefield experience, pointed his gauntlet at the creature's head. Here, the cranial structure. Sever the head, the beast dies. Incorrect. The apothecary snapped. He plunged a gleaming scalpel into the creature's chest cavity, digging beneath the chitinous ribs. With a sickening wet pop, he severed a thick purple nerve bundle. This. The secondary ganglion. It routes commands from the hive mind even if the brain case is destroyed. A dead hormigaunt can still slice you in two with its death throws. You aim for the head, you are targeting its senses. You aim for this, you are targeting its function. Know the difference? The Codex Astartes does not teach this distinction. The apothecary moved to Fenrir. Brother Fenrir, you see orc flesh. You see a green animal. You are wrong. He activated a lumen on his servo arm, illuminating the creature's internal structure. You see this fungal matter, it is not just flesh. It is a reproductive system. Every drop of blood you spill, every fragment of flesh you leave on the battlefield can, under the right conditions, spawn a new generation of greenskins. Your glorious charges, your honorable melees, are seeding future wars. The only way to truly kill an orc is with fire. Total incineration. Your preference for the chains word is a tactical liability. Fenrir's hands clenched, his face dark, but he said nothing. The truth of the apothecary's words was a cold poison. You, the apothecary said, turning to Sangua, will learn how an elder's muscles function, why they are faster than you, and how their spirit stones trap their souls. You, he nodded to Ferris, will dismantle that drone and learn its data language so you may predict its targeting solutions. For hours they worked. Kalen was forced to plunge his gauntlets into the creature's reeking innards, tracing nerve pathways, cracking open adrenal sacs, learning the precise pressure needed to puncture its acidic bladder without it dissolving his armor. The smell was overwhelming, a physical assault. The act itself felt like a violation, a knowing that bordered on the heretical. This was not the clean, righteous purge. This was intimate, grotesque butchery. The second part of the lesson took place in a dark scriptorium. A watch lexicanum, a librarian whose psychic hood was wrought in the shape of a Xenos skull, stood before them. He did not speak, but projected images directly into their minds, a flood of forbidden history. They saw the great victory at Scalax, a battle Kalen had studied as a shining example of Imperial Guard valor. The lexicanum showed them the truth: the battle was a catastrophic loss. The Guard regiment was wiped out, and the victory was a falsified report filed by an Ordo Xenos kill team that had been forced to detonate a cyclonic torpedo, rendering the world uninhabitable just to stop the Necron tomb from fully awakening. They saw the true extent of the Tyranid threat. Not just scattered fleets, but a galaxy-spanning shadow, an intelligence so vast that the fleets they were fighting were mere scouting tendrils. They learned that the Imperium was not holding the line. It was a banquet table, and the main course had not yet begun. They were shown records of the Tau not as misguided primitives, but as a rapidly evolving empire whose technology was in some fields beginning to surpass that of the Imperium. They saw footage of Imperial worlds peacefully defecting to the greater good. This was the true purpose of the lesson. The dissection was to break their physical disgust. The history was to break their doctrinal certainty. The Imperium was built on lies, and they were now the guardians of those lies. The knowledge settled on Kalen like a shroud. He had been taught that the truth would set him free. He now knew that the truth was the heaviest chain of all. Kalen's lesson in dishonor was followed by a trial of pure red-blooded animosity. The recruits were summoned to the grave, a sparring cage sunk into the fortress's deck, its floor stained with centuries of Astartes' blood. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and ozone. This time the instructor was not Aras, but a figure of absolute dread, a Deathwatch chaplain. His black armor was adorned with relics and purity seals, but his helmet was the traditional bare skull of his office, gleaming with a terrifying, judgmental polish. His weapon was not a bolter, but a massive, powered Crozius Arcanum, buzzing with a disruptive energy field. He pointed the Crozius at Kalen, then at Fenrir. "You, Ultramarine, and you, Wolf of Fenris, enter the grave. Combat knives only. Last warrior standing." Kalen and Fenrir looked at each other. The simmering resentment that had defined their brief acquaintance now had an outlet. Kalen saw an undisciplined, savage brute. Fenrir saw a posturing, arrogant weakling who hid behind rules. Chaplain Kalen began inter-squad conflict is detrimental to unit. "I did not ask for your tactical analysis, Kalen." The chaplain's voice was a sepulchral rattle. "I gave an order. Your chapters have nurtured a rivalry for 10,000 years. It is a poison. We will bleed it out. Now." They descended into the cage, the heavy gate clanging shut behind them. They circled each other, knives held low. There was no bell, no signal. Fenrir lunged first, not with a precise stab, but with a roar, a wild windmill slash aimed at Kalen's throat. Kalen parried the ceramite plates of his gauntlets, screaming as Fenrir's blade scraped across them. He countered with a tight, Codex-approved series of thrusts aimed at the wolf's unarmored joints. Fenrir was a force of nature. He didn't fight with technique, he fought with instinct. He headbutted Kalen, the crack of their helmets ringing like a bell, sending Kalen staggering. He followed up with a kick that would have broken a normal man in two, but Kalen absorbed it, using the momentum to spin and slash at the wolf's side. The fight devolved. This was not a spar. It was an assassination attempt. The ancient bitter rivalry between their gene lines, the Wolf King's wildness versus the Primarch of Order, was playing out in miniature. Fenrir's snarling fury met Kalen's cold, logical precision. Kalen cut Fenrir's arm. Fenrir broke Kalen's rib. Heel Wolf Kalen grunted, blocking a savage blow. Dicodex thumper Fenrir roared back, tackling Kalen to the ground. They rolled a 2,000-kilo mass of black armor and pure hatred, punching, stabbing, gouging. Fenrir's teeth were bared, his eyes wild. Kalen, his face a mask of cold fury, was systematically trying to find a killing blow. The training was forgotten. This was blood sport. A shadow fell over them. A deafening crack of energy hitting the floor plate between them sent both Astartes flying apart. The chaplain stood in the center of the cage, his Crozius smoking. He had moved with a speed that belied his massive bulk. Pathetic, he intoned. He struck Fenrir first. The wolf, rising to charge, was met with a brutal, backhanded blow from the energy mace that sent him crashing into the cage wall, his armor sparking. Kalen lunged knife first, trying to disarm the chaplain. The chaplain didn't bother to parry. He simply stepped inside Kalen's lunge, grabbed his wrist with his free hand, and crushed it. Kalen's knife clattered to the floor as his gauntlet's actuators failed. The chaplain then slammed the pommel of his Crozius into Kalen's chest, knocking the air from his lungs and sending him to his knees. The entire engagement had lasted less than 3 seconds. The chaplain stood over them both. Warriors defeated his skull helm, seeming to glower with righteous contempt. Your hatred, your pride, your pathetic ancient feuds, they are luxuries. They are vanities that the Deathwatch cannot afford. He pointed his Crozius at Fenrir. You fight with rage. It makes you predictable. You are a blunt instrument, a rabid dog. He turned to Kalen. You fight with arrogance. You believe your logic is superior. It makes you rigid. You are a brittle blade easy to shatter. He hauled them both to their feet, his grip like steel clamps. You are not a wolf. You are not an ultramarine. You are scrap. You are raw material to be reforged, and you will be reforged together. Their punishment was immediate. They were handed welding torches and pressure sealers and ordered to a sub-cargo bay that had been breached by a previous Xenos encounter. The task: sanitation and repair. The bay was a nightmare. It was coated in a thick, resinous something left by tyrannid organisms. The stench of acidic musk was overpowering. Their job was to scrape, burn, and seal every trace of the biocontamination. It was grueling, disgusting work fit for servitors. For the first hour they worked in seething silence, their shared humiliation a thick wall between them. Fenrir worked with savage, angry bursts of the torch. Kaelin worked with a methodical, cold precision. They reached a nexus of pulsing alien fungus that had grown over a critical power conduit. Fenrir raised his torch to burn it. "Stop," Kaelin ordered, his voice flat. "The heat will fuse the conduit." "It is alien filth. It must burn," Fenrir growled. "If you burn it, you will breach the conduit. The entire section will vent. We need to cut it out, manually." Fenrir looked at the pulsating purple mass, then at Kaelin. He wanted to argue. He wanted to fight. But the logic, the cold, undeniable truth of Kaelin's observation held him back. "Fine," Fenrir snarled. He handed Kaelin his combat knife. "Your hand is steadier, Lord." The name was an insult, but the gesture was not. Kaelin took the knife. "Cover me. If this thing has spores, torch them as they're released, but do not hit the conduit." Kaelin began the disgusting work of cutting away the alien growth, his knife sinking into the rubbery flesh. Fenrir stood over him, torch held high, his eyes narrowed, anticipating the slightest change. Kaelin cut, Fenrir burned. Back and forth. Kaelin anticipated where the growth was thickest. Fenrir anticipated where the spores would spray. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. In that cramped, stinking tunnel, a new language was formed, a language of shared action, of pure, functional, non-verbal communication. Kaelin moved left. Fenrir adjusted his torch to the right. Fenrir stepped back to brace himself. Kaelin paused his cut, knowing the wolf needed a stable stance. When they finished hours later, they were both covered in alien gore, but the conduit was clean. They stood side by side looking at their work. "You fight like a cog boy," Fenrir grunted, cleaning his knife. "And you fight like a grox in a rage fever," Kaelin replied, sealing the last plate. A beat of silence. "But your aim with the torch is adequate," Kaelin conceded, not looking at him. Fenrir let out a short, harsh bark. It wasn't quite a laugh. "And your cutting does not entirely displease me." They were not friends. They were not brothers. But they were no longer just a wolf and an ultramarine. They were two warriors who now knew without a doubt how the other would move. And in the Deathwatch, that was more valuable than friendship. The next stage of their reforging took them to the heart of the fortress's sacrilege, the primary armory. But this was not the sanctified hall of machine spirits Kaelin knew. It was a vault of chilling pragmatism. The chamber was vast, cold, and lit by the sickly green glow of stasis fields. One wall was lined with the familiar holy shapes of Imperial wargear bolters of every pattern, flamers, plasma guns, and chains wards, all consecrated and anointed. The recruits were drawn to it, a familiar comfort in this alien place. Then the tech marine guiding them, a black-armored son of Medusa, more machine than man, activated the lights on the other wall. Kaelin's breath caught in his throat. His two hearts faltered. It was a wall of heresy. Racks upon racks of Xeno's weaponry, all tagged, catalogued, and maintained in perfect working order. He saw the elegant bone-white length of an elder shuriken catapult. He saw the brutal, jagged metal of an orc shooter, its machine spirit clearly crude and violent. He saw the cold, black metal and green cabling of a Necron Gauss flare, its very presence a violation of physics. And in a stasis field of its own, a Tau pulse rifle, its sleek lines an insult to the holy form of the bolter. "You have learned to know the enemy's flesh," the tech marine's synthesized voice droned. "You will now learn to know its tools." Fenrir spat on the deck. "This is filth! We should be melting it, not displaying it." "You will do more than display it," the tech marine stated. He gestured to a rack of Drukhari weapons, vile blades that seemed to writhe with captured pain, splinter rifles that dripped simulated toxins. "You will learn to operate every single one." The recruits recoiled as one. Even Ferrus the Iron Hand seemed disturbed, his augmetic eye narrowing. "This is illogical. The Omnissiah's rights are the only true path. This technology is an aberration. It is an aberration that kills Imperial citizens by the billion. The Tech Marine countered his lack of emotion, making his words even sharper. Your rites are pure. They are also slow. The Xenos does not wait for your incense and prayers. To defeat a weapon, you must understand its function. To understand its function, you must be able to use it. He picked up a sleek, vicious-looking blade, its edge humming with a dark energy. A Drakari power sword. He tossed it at Kaelin's feet where it skidded and came to a stop on the deck. Pick it up, Ultramarine. Kaelin stared at the weapon as if it were a serpent. Every fiber of his being, every lesson of the Codex, every prayer to the machine god screamed at him not to. To touch such a thing was to invite corruption. It was a betrayal of everything he stood for. That is a tool of the alien. Kaelin said, his voice low and tight. It is an object of profound evil. My hands will remain pure. Your hands! The Tech Marine stepped forward, his metal footfalls echoing. Your hands are already stained, brother. You are in a place of shadows. You think the enemy cares for your purity. You think a Genestealer will pause because your soul is clean. He kicked the sword, nudging it closer to Kaelin's boot. Pick it up. Kaelin felt the eyes of the others on him. He was the exemplar, the one who followed the rules. He looked at the hateful alien curve of the hilt. He remembered Aris's words in the simulation. Your honor is a chain. With a surge of self-loathing that tasted like ash, Kaelin bent and wrapped his black gauntlet around the hilt. It felt wrong. The energy field of the blade was not the clean, righteous hum of an Imperial power sword. It was a thin, thirsty whine. He felt a phantom sensation, a whisper of agony bleed through his gauntlet's sensorium. The weapon wanted to inflict pain. I have it, Kaelin grunted, his teeth clenched. Good, the Tech Marine said, unimpressed. Now Sangua, the shuriken catapult, Ferrus the pulse rifle. Fenrir, you get the shooter. You will learn their mechanisms. You will learn their rate of fire, their effective range, their ammunition, and their maintenance. You will strip them, you will clean them, you will reassemble them, you will fire them. Watch Commander Aris's voice suddenly flooded the chamber, coming from every speaker. Know your enemy, he rasped as if he had been watching them all along. And know his weapons. There will come a time, warrior, when your holy bolter jams. There will come a time when your last magazine is empty. You will be wounded, your brother's dead, and the alien will be advancing. Aris spoke. Kaelin looked at the profane blade in his hand. He could already feel its balance, the alien ergonomics of its design. It was light, fast, deadly. In that moment, Aris's voice concluded, a dead Xenos' weapon will be the only thing between you and annihilation. And in that moment, you will not care about the machine god. You will not care about purity. You will only care about survival. And you will use the tool provided. Purity is a myth. Only the mission is real. Learn the lesson. Kaelin lifted the Drakari sword, its dark edge whining in the cold air. He hated it. He hated what it represented. But as he ran a diagnostic with his gauntlet, he was already committing its weight and balance to his tactical memory. The trials of flesh and steel were complete. Now came the trial of the soul. Kaelin and his squad, along with another kill team of initiates among them, a stern, yellow-armored Imperial fist named Dawn, were led to the Reclusium. This was not a place of worship, but a place of interrogation. They were strapped into psycho-interrogation chairs, their black-armored bodies held fast. Heavy, damp-smelling psychic hoods were lowered over their helmets, and Kaelin felt the cold, invasive touch of another mind. The Watch Lexicanum, the same one who had shown them the forbidden histories, stood before them. His eyes glowed with a faint blue witchlight as he began the deep probe. Your body is strong, a voice echoed, not in the room, but inside Kaelin's skull. Your doctrine is broken. Your hatred is focused. But your mind is a fortress, and every fortress has a flaw. We must find yours. Kaelin's memories were forcibly unfurled. He saw Macrage not as a bastion of glory, but as a symbol of his arrogance. He saw his chapter master not as a leader, but as a man of pride blind to the true threat. The librarian was twisting his past, testing the foundations of his loyalty, searching for any crack, any sliver of doubt, any flicker of corruption that a Xenos taint could exploit. Kalen held firm his ultramarine mental disciplines, the catechisms of order and logic forming a barrier. The librarian pushed harder, dredging up the failure on Iax, the faces of the brothers he had lost. Kalen endured the psychic onslaught, his mind a fortress of cold, hard duty. Resistance is strong. The librarian's voice whispered and then withdrew. The pressure subsided. The mind is fortified. Now we test its resilience. The world inside Kalen's head dissolved. He was no longer in the reclusium. He was standing in a clean white room, the light soft and even. The air was temperate, peaceful. Across from him, standing by a holographic display of a star cluster, was a Toe. It was not a fire-caste warrior. It was a diplomat, a water-caste envoy, its blue-gray skin smooth, its face open and intelligent. It wore no armor, only simple, elegant robes. Brother Sergeant Kalen the Toe said, its voice a perfect, unaccented Gothic. It did not try to kill him. It did not threaten him. It offered him a cup of clear water. "We have studied you," the Toe continued, its tone one of reasonable discourse. "You are a being of logic, of order. You seek to build, to protect. You value stability." "I serve the Emperor," Kalen stated, his hand instinctively going for a weapon that was not there. "Do you?" the Toe asked, its large dark eyes filled with something akin to pity. "You serve a corpse on a throne. You serve an empire of 1,000,000 worlds choking on its own dogma, stagnant and rotting from within. An empire that demands the sacrifice of its best and brightest like you, for a war it cannot win, and a past it cannot reclaim." Kalen felt a spike of anger, but the Toe's logic was an insidious poison. "Look at what we offer," the Toe gestured to the star map. "The Tova, the greater good. It is not a blind faith. It is a simple, logical principle. Every being human Toe-Kroot working together for the mutual benefit of all. An end to this pointless, galaxy-consuming war. An end to the slaughter. We offer progress. We offer peace. We offer a future." "It is a Xenos lie," Kalen growled, but the words felt hollow in the face of the creature's calm. "Is it?" the Toe pressed its voice gentle. "Your Imperium demands ignorance. It demands you hate what you do not understand. We demand only that you think. Is it not better to build a bridge than a wall? Is it not a greater calling to save 1,000,000,000 lives than to sacrifice them for an abstract, ancient honor? You Kalen a mind of such clarity. You must see the waste. You must see the futility of your long vigil. The temptation was not of power or of forbidden knowledge. It was the temptation of reason. It was the siren song of an end to the endless, brutal, thankless war. It was the logical, peaceful alternative that Kalen's codex-trained mind was so dangerously equipped to appreciate. Kalen closed his eyes. He saw the burning city from his first mission. The millions dead, the necessary sacrifice. He saw the cold, dead eyes of the Watch Commander. He saw the lies he was now sworn to protect. The Toe was right. It was futile. It was a waste. But then he saw something else. The slimy, chitinous claw of a Genestealer, the dead, soulless eye of a Necron, the shrieking, pain-obsessed face of a Drukhari. "You speak of peace." Kalen said, his voice a low growl, opening his eyes. "But your greater good is a lie of omission. You offer peace only to those who bow. You do not understand what is in the dark. You cannot build a bridge with the Tyrannid. You cannot negotiate with the Orc. Your logic is a child's dream in a galaxy of nightmares. Your greater good is a candle and the Imperium. The Imperium is the fortress wall, however cracked and crumbling, that shields it from the hurricane." Kalen stepped forward. "My faith is in the Emperor. My duty is to the Imperium. And my purpose," his hand lashed out, "not to take the water, but to snap the Toe's neck, is to kill the alien." The simulation shattered. The Tau dissolved. Kalen was back in the chair, gasping, the psychic hood pulling away. The librarian was watching him, its glowing eyes unreadable. "The fortress holds. You have passed." Kalen looked to his side. The Imperial Fist Dawn was convulsing his body, straining against the restraints. A thin line of blood trickled from beneath his helmet's vox grill. He is right!" Dawn whispered, his voice full of a terrible, broken awe. "The logic, it is pure. The Imperium. We are wrong." The librarian did not hesitate. His hand went to a rune on the chair's control panel. His fortress has fallen. The floor was his own rigid certainty, which once broken left nothing behind. The panel glowed red. Kalen watched in horror as a blinding, pure, white-hot energy coursed through the Imperial Fist's body. There was a single choked scream, and then silence. The smell of ozone and cooked meat filled the reclusium. Two servitors clanked forward, unlocking the smoking, blackened armor. "He has failed," the librarian stated, his voice devoid of all emotion. "He is removed from the vigil. Learn from his weakness. A mind that is too curious, too willing to entertain the alien's logic, is a mind already lost." Kalen watched them drag the body away. No one else spoke. Failure here was not a reprimand. It was a final, silent execution. They returned to the Crucible, but this time no Drukhari city shimmered into view. Instead, a steaming, oppressive jungle formed around them. Thick mist clung to their black armor, and the drone of alien insects filled the air. The kill team Kalen, Fenrir, Sangwa, and Ferris formed a defensive circle, weapons ready. Terrain jungle, density extreme, visibility. Poor Ferris reported, his monotone voice flat over the vox. And then it hit. It was not a sound. It was not an attack. It was a suppression. The dim light of the Crucible seemed to gutter and fade. The insect drone fell silent. Kalen felt an indescribable psychic pressure, a weight of millions of tons pressed down on his mind. It was like being submerged at the bottom of an endless, dark, cold ocean. This was the shadow in the warp, the suffocating psychic presence of the tyrannid hive mind. "Island signal, lost being, suppress!" Fenrir's voice shattered into a hiss. Comms were gone. But worse, Kalen felt an emotion he had not felt since he was mortal fear. Not tactical apprehension or a warrior's caution. This was primal animal terror, the fear of prey that knows the predator is here. A single alien thought not his own echoed in his mind. Hunger. "Hold fast," Kalen roared, but he wasn't sure if anyone could hear him over the ruptured channel. He looked at Sangwa. The Blood Angel was shaking the joints of his armor, groaning. The fear and the psychic pressure were aggravating his thirst, pushing him to the brink of madness. From the mists they came. Dozens, then hundreds of Hormagaunts, scythed talons clicking a river of chitin and claw. "Open fire," Kalen ordered, and his team unleashed. Bolters roared, tearing the first creatures apart, but more swarmed in to replace them. Ferris deployed his heavy assault cannon, scything an arc of fire through the horde. Innumerable. "Ineffective," he shouted over the din. Sangwa finally broke. For the Emperor and Sanguinius, he screamed the red thirst claiming him, and he charged straight into the wave, his twin power swords flashing in a crimson fury. "Sangwa, return. Hold the line." Kalen shouted, his ultramarine instinct screaming, "Protect your brother. Hold the line." But Sangwa was submerged. He was surrounded an island of black armor in a sea of scythes. "We have to save him." Fenrir snarled, readying to charge in after him. "Wait," Kalen commanded, his mind fighting the psychic dread. They were endless. Sangwa was a distraction. This was a trap. The shadow in the warp. Synapse. The apothecary's lesson returned. Don't target the limbs. Target the head. He raised his visor, scanning the sea of creatures. He ignored Sangwa, who was being torn apart, his armor flashing a deep red, vitals fading. He ignored the Hormagaunts, closing on their position. He searched for the source, and he saw it. Deep in the jungle, standing on a rise, was a massive tyrannid warrior, a synapse creature. It wasn't fighting. It was just standing there, the tendrils on its face twitching, directing the attack. It was the puppet, and the simulated hive tyrant somewhere beyond was the master. Target Kalen yelled, designating it on his HUD. Ferrus Fenrir focus fire on that synapse creature. Ignore the swarm. What about Sangua? Fenrir bellowed, batting a gaunt away with his rifle butt. Sangua is an acceptable loss. Kalen roared the words cold and alien even to his own ears. The mission is to break synapse fire. It was a betrayal of everything he had ever been taught. He was turning his back on a dying brother. Kalen raised his stalker pattern bolter, ignoring the claws raking at his legs. He took a breath, aimed, and squeezed the trigger. A hellfire round streaked through the mist and detonated inside the Tyranid warrior's chest. Ferrus and Fenrir, after a fatal second of hesitation, followed. 3 streams of concentrated fire poured into the high-priority target. The warrior convulsed, shrieked a psychic wail, and collapsed. Instantly, the shadow in the warp lessened. The fear receded. And the Hormagaunts. They stopped. They became chaotic, attacking each other, running in circles, purposeless. They were no longer a weapon. They were just hungry beasts. Kalen's HUD displayed teammate Sangua Kia simulated. Synapse target neutralized, mission successful. The jungle dissolved. Kalen stood there, panting, his bolter still smoking. Sangua was standing a few meters away, unharmed, trembling from the psycho feedback. Fenrir was staring at Kalen, not with anger, but with a look of appalled, grudging respect. Kalen had sacrificed a brother to win. He felt no honor, he felt no pride, he felt only the cold, ruthless necessity of the mission. The lesson was learned. The crucible floor shifted. The holographic jungle dissolved, replaced by a nightmare of impossible architecture. Jagged spires of obsidian and flensed bone pierced a sickly green-black sky. They were in a simulation of the dark city Comora. The very air seemed to hiss with malice, and the terrain was a disorienting, shifting maze of shadowed alleys and razor-edged bridges. Environment unstable. Non-Euclidean Ferrus voxed his augmetic eye, struggling to map the shifting landscape. Gravity is variable. Objective Watch Commander Aris's voice cut through the air, cold and sharp. Locate and destroy the primary webway portal anchor. Secondary objective extract. Enemy Drukhari full spectrum. Stay tight, Kalen ordered, his voice low. No one moves alone. Fenrir, you take point. Your senses are sharpest. Ferrus, rear guard. Sangua, you are with me. We are the core. They moved not as a line, but as a tight 4-point diamond. The city was a trap. Alleys closed behind them. Bridges shimmered out of existence as they approached, forcing them onto narrow, exposed ledges. Ethereal, mocking laughter echoed from all sides, seeming to come from the walls themselves. They were being herded. Movement, Fenrir growled, his bolter snapping up. High 3 o'clock. Kalen saw it, a blur of motion. A raider skiff, simulated but terrifyingly real, swept overhead, raining splinter fire down on them. They scattered, diving for cover. It's a feint, Kalen yelled as he saw the real attack. Witches, a dozen of them, emerged from the shadows below them, climbing the sheer walls like spiders. The fight was instant and brutal. It was not a battle, but a chaotic melee. Kalen found himself back to back with Sangua, their blades a wall of steel against the hyper-fast attackers. Ferrus laid down a wall of heavy bolter fire, forcing the witches to stay mobile. But Fenrir at the point was isolated, a net dark and barbed shot from an alleyway entangling the space wolf. Before he could roar in defiance, 3 witches were on him. They didn't go for the kill. They jabbed him with simulated agonizers. Fenrir screamed. It was not a war cry. It was a raw, unfiltered sound of pure agony. His vital sign rune on Kalen's HUD didn't flash red for dead. It pulsed a sickening yellow. The witches cackled, dragging the convulsing space wolf back into the shadows. The wolf is taken. Sangua yelled, his voice tight with the red thirst sparked by his comrade's pain. We must retrieve him. Negative. Kalen snapped, his mind racing. He looked at the alley where Fenrir had vanished. It was dark, silent. It's a trap. They want us to follow. They're luring us into a kill zone. We cannot leave a brother. Sangua protested, his angelic features contorted in fury. He is no longer our brother. He is bait. Kalen's voice was harsh, colder than he thought possible. He remembered the lesson of the Tyranid simulation. The primary objective is the portal. Ferris, find it. Portal anchor detected. The Iron Hand's voice was a balm of pure logic in the chaos. 200 meters sub-level. This way. We are leaving him. Sangua's voice was incredulous, horrified. Over the vox they heard it. Fenrir's screaming. The simulation was not just killing him. It was subjecting him to a full sensory virtual experience of Drukhari torture. It was a lesson in pain designed to break his mind and to break the team's cohesion. Kalen felt a moment of sickening indecision. The sound was unbearable. It was an assault on his very being, his duty to his pack. Kalen, Sangua pleaded. The Inquisitor Varus did not blink. We do not ask for what is spared. We demand what is owed. The long vigil does not concern itself with the ebb and flow of conventional warfare. It concerns itself with the abyss that seeks to swallow your precious conventional warhole. He produced a data slate. The tithe is one. A specialist. The mission, Kalen said, his voice a dead monotone. He turned his back on the sound of his teammates' agony. Move, now. He pushed Sangua, forcing the Blood Angel to turn. They ran Sangua, trembling with a mixture of the thirst and profound shame, Ferris providing a stoic, unwavering rear guard. Fenrir's screams followed them, echoing through the twisted streets until they were finally drowned out by the thrumming, sickening sound of the webway portal. They found it a shimmering, tearing wound in reality. As the Iron Hand worked, the last of Fenrir's simulated life signs flatlined on Kalen's HUD. The screams stopped. A cold, terrible silence settled over the kill team. Sangua was perfectly still, his head bowed. Charge set, Ferris stated. Detonate. Simulation ends. Kalen voxed, his voice empty. The holographic city of Comora vanished. They were back in the grey crucible. Fenrir stood 20 meters away, his armor unmarked, his body rigid. He was staring at Kalen, his face pale, his eyes wide with the phantom memory of unimaginable pain. He had felt every second of it. You left me, Fenrir whispered, his voice hoarse. I completed the mission, Kalen replied, his black gauntlet resting on the bolter he had not fired. That was the test. They sacrifice our pain. We sacrifice our brothers. Sangua looked from the haunted space wolf to the cold ultramarine. The team had succeeded, but the cost was a terrible new silence between them. The crucible did not wait for their psychological wounds to heal. The green-black of Comorag dissolved, replaced by the cold, dry air of a vast subterranean tomb. The geometry was perfect, ancient and alien. Green light pulsed in geometric patterns along the black metallic walls. Analysis Necron architecture. Ferris stated, his voice the only sound in the dead quiet. Tomb complex, sub-designation stasis crypt. As if summoned by his word, alcoves hissed open. From the darkness, skeletal metallic figures emerged, their movements jerky and unnervingly precise. Necron warriors. Their eyes glowed with a dead green light, and they raised their Gauss flares as one. Engage, Kalen ordered. The kill team opened fire. Bolter rounds heavier than standard punched through the ancient metal. The Necrons shattered limbs, flying torsos, exploding, clattering to the stone floor. Targets down. Advance, Kalen commanded, stepping over the metallic corpse of a fallen warrior. They moved for 10 seconds before a sound made them stop. A high-pitched whine. Behind them, the Necrons they had just destroyed were stirring. Green energy flickered over their broken bodies. Shattered limbs crawled back to their torsos. Smashed heads reformed. Within moments, the dead warriors were standing up, their weapons, raised, their eyes glowing with the same cold malice. They are reanimating, Sangua whispered, his voice laced with horrified awe. Then we kill them again! Fenrir roared, firing a fresh burst into the nearest one. It fell apart, and it immediately began to reassemble. Panic, cold and sharp, began to creep in. This was an enemy they could not kill. They poured fire into the phalanx. Dozens fell, dozens rose. For every one they put down, another would take its place, or the same one would simply get back up. SGU's bolt gun clicked empty. Fenrir was snarling, reduced to using his rifle as a club, only for the dented machine to stand back up. "This is futile," Sangwa cried, his thirst rising, but it was a thirst of desperation, not rage. How could he fight an enemy that would not bleed and would not die? Kalen Ferris's voice cut through the panic. "Tactical analysis. My shots are 98% effective in achieving neutralization, but neutralization is temporary. Reanimation protocols are drawing power from an ambient source. We are not fighting soldiers, brother. We are fighting a system." Kalen's mind, forged in the fire of the previous trials, seized on the logic. Sacrifice the peace to take the board. Don't fight the gaunt, fight the synapse. Don't save the bait, take the objective. He scanned the tomb, his auger lenses filtering past the warriors. He saw the grid of green light on the walls, all culminating in one spot deep in the chamber. A massive pulsing green crystal, a primary energy conduit guarded by a solid unmoving wall of Necron's Lichguard equivalents, this time their shields locked. There Kalen designated the target. The conduit. "We can't kill the army. We have to kill the tomb." Ferris Sangwa suppressive fire draw their attention. "You are the anvil." "What is the hammer?" Fenrir growled, reloading. "We are," Kalen replied. "With me, Wolf. We are not fighting them. We are breaching. A charge against a wall of metal. Not a charge. A battering ram." Kalen and Fenrir broke from the line. They didn't fire. They lowered their shoulders and ran a combined mass of over 1,000 kilos of ceramite and muscle slamming into the phalanx of Necrons. They didn't use their knives or fists. They used their sheer brutal weight. Gauss fire sizzled, raking their armor, the pain stimulus sharp and cold, but they ignored it. Kalen hit the line, his shoulder pauldron shattering a Necron's ribcage. Fenrir bowled too, over-roaring as he used his own body as a weapon. They weren't fighting. They were pushing, shoving, creating a gap through the living metallic wall. Kalen burst through, melter charge in hand. He saw the conduit a pulsing evil green. He slammed the charge onto its surface, arming it. "Back," he roared. He and Fenrir turned, smashing their way back out, shoving aside the very same Necrons that were already getting to their feet. They rejoined Sangwa and Ferris. Clear Kloop detonated the charge. There was a deafening, silent explosion of green light, and then a profound, absolute darkness as the conduit shattered. The green light in the tomb died, and every single Necron warrior, whether standing, rising, or shattered, instantly froze. Then as one, they collapsed, their systems dead, clattering to the floor like 1,000 discarded puppets. This time, they did not move. The simulation faded. Kalen stood, his breathing even. He had learned. You do not fight the Necron. You fight his power source. You do not fight the Horde. You fight the mind. The lesson was cold, logical, and utterly without honor. They did not have time to recover. The cold floor of the Necron tomb melted away, replaced by the shattered, burning streets of an imperial hive city. Rubble was piled high, and the air was thick with smoke and the distant sound of screaming. Final trial. Watch Commander Aras's voice echoed, devoid of any preamble. Enemy traitor Astartes Wordbearer's Legion. Objective: hold this plaza until extraction. A fresh wave of dread hit Kalen. Traitor Marines. Astartes, his mind conditioned for a lifetime to see them as the ultimate antithesis, braced for a conventional battle. The kill team formed up instantly, their previous lessons creating an instinctive cohesion. Diamond formation, Kalen ordered, his voice crisp. Ferris high ground that ruined Hab block. Heavy bolter overwatch. Fenrir, you're on the left flank. Use the shadows. Sangwa with me center. Watch for deep strike. The enemy appeared. 3 simulated chaos. Space Marines, their armor, a deep corrupted crimson, stalked from the smoke bolters blazing. Engage, Kalen yelled. The battle was joined. It was a fight of equals. Bolter fire hammered their positions. Sangwa met a charging berserker analog, their power swords clashing in a shower of sparks. Ferris's heavy weapon chattered, forcing one of the traitors to keep his head down. It was hard. It was brutal. And it was a lie. The ground in the center of the plaza exploded, not from a chaos melter charge, but from below. A torrent of robed and armored figures burst from a shattered sewer main, their features a sickening blend of human and Xenos. They carried autoguns, mining lasers, and crude explosives. "New contacts," Ferris yelled, his voice flat with surprise. "Xenos-human hybrid signatures. Designation Genestealer cult." At the same moment, the Chaos Marines they were fighting flickered and dissolved into static. They had been a distraction. Scenario updated, Aris's voice intoned. "Threat Genestealer cult uprising. The primary infection. Purge the command structure. Survive." This was the real test. The true enemy. And it was an enemy that used all the tactics they had just faced. The horde of the Tyrannid. The cunning of the Drukhari. From the shadows, the true monsters emerged. Four-armed, purple-skinned blurs of motion. Pure-strain Genestealers moving with a speed that made the Drukhari seem slow. They were the Synapse, the leaders, the real threat. The team was surrounded, caught in a complex, multi-layered ambush. The cultists provided numbers and heavy fire, while the Genestealers went for the killing blows. This was the moment of their breaking, or their forging. Team Kalen's voice cut through the chaos cold and absolute. "Ignore the chaff, the pure strains of the Synapse, Ferris." "On it," the Iron Hand replied. He didn't wait for the order. He had already identified the mining laser, the single biggest threat. He ignored the autogun fire, peppering his armor, and fired a single perfect burst, killing the heavy weapon team. Fenrir Kalen snapped. "Your flank acolytes with demo charges heading for the building." The old Fenrir would have charged a glorious suicidal howl. The new Fenrir was a hunter? "I see them," he growled. He didn't charge. He flanked. He used the rubble, herding the acolytes with short, disciplined bursts, forcing them into a bottleneck. He was not a berserker. He was a sheepdog, a wolf herding his prey into a trap. Sangua intercept. My position, Kalen was pinned by two Genestealers, their claws screeching on his armor as he parried with his combat knife. "I am the Angel's Fury," Sangua roared. The red thirst was upon him, but it was not the blind rage of the simulation. It was a channeled, focused inferno. He didn't charge wildly. He moved with lethal tactical purpose, crashing into the Genestealers that were on Kalen, his twin blades, a vortex of death. He was not a victim of his thirst. He was using it. Kalen was free. He raised his bolter. The cult was in chaos, its elite killers dead, or occupied, its heavy support gone. He saw the leader, a robed, bald-headed magus, directing the attack from a ruined shrine. Target designated, Kalen voxed a single cold thought. All units, converge, purge. It was a symphony of destruction. Ferris laid down a wall of suppressive fire, pinning the magus's guards. Fenrir burst from the flank, savaging the acolytes. Sangua carved a path through the remaining hybrids, a black and red blur of focused rage. Kalen walked through the path his team had cleared, raised his bolter, and put 3 rounds into the magus's chest. The simulation froze. The last screaming cultist vanished. Silence. The 4 of them stood in the center of the gray, empty room. They were breathing heavily, their armor's diagnostics flashing with simulated damage. They didn't speak. They formed a tight circle, back-to-back, weapons still ready. They looked at each other. Kalen saw not an undisciplined wolf, but a lethal hunter. He saw not a slave to the thirst, but a righteous storm. He saw not a cold machine, but an unshakable anchor. Watch Commander Aras descended on his platform. He stared at them for a long, heavy minute. His augmetic eye whirred, analyzing them. Kalen met his gaze, his stance perfect, his mind cold. The commander's synthesized voice came over the speaker. A single word. Acceptable. The platform rose, carrying Aras back into the darkness. A beat of silence. And then Fenrir let out a short, harsh bark that might have been a laugh. Acceptable, he rasped, sheathing his knife. From that ancient sack of rust, I'll take it as a victory hymn. Sangua relaxed his stance, his blades retracting. We functioned. We did, Kalen said, nodding once to each of them. They were no longer an ultramarine, a wolf, an angel, and an iron hand. They were a weapon forged in Xenos fire. They were Kill Team Etius. Their acceptable performance earned them no rest. They were marched from the crucible, not to the armory or the scriptorium, but down deep into the bedrock of the Watch Fortress. The air grew older, and carried the sterile, dusty scent of catacombs. They entered a vault so deep it felt entirely disconnected from the station above. The chamber was circular, carved from the asteroid's native black stone. The only light came from a single flickering lumen globe suspended over a polished obsidian slab in the center. The walls were lined with thousands of small, iron-capped niches. The Deathwatch chaplain, the same one who had presided over their brutal sparring match, stood waiting, his skull helm a pale shadow in the gloom. "You have been broken," his sepulchral voice echoed in the tight space. "You have been reforged. You have proven adequate. But the trial of skill is nothing. Now comes the trial of fealty. The vigil is not a duty you perform. It is a vow you become." He gestured to the obsidian slab. "You came here with names. Kalen, Fenrir, Sangwa, Ferrus. These are the names of your past. They are the names of proud chapters and glorious histories. They are anchors, and anchors have no place in the tide we fight." He produced a data slate. "Your new designations have been chosen. They are not names. They are call signs, tactical identifiers. They are all you will be known by. They are all that will be etched upon your niche when you fall." He looked at each of them in turn. "Ferrus, your logic is your strength. You are Cognus. Sangwa, your fire is your weapon. You are Ignis. Fenrir, your hunt is your purpose. You are Varga." He turned his skull helm to Kalen. "And you, Ultramarine, you who clings to the old ways, the old structures, you believe you are a shield, a guardian of the Imperium's ideals. You shall be Aetius after the last shield of an empire long dead." A fitting irony. Kalen no Aetius felt his old name die on his lips. It was the final cut, the last thread connecting him to Macraga. He was now just a function, a historical footnote. "Step forward," the chaplain commanded. "Renounce your past. Swear the vigil." One by one they stepped onto the slab. Ferrus Cognus began, his voice flat, renounce the name Ferrus. "I renounce Medusa. My flesh and my steel belong to the Ordo Xenos. I swear the long vigil." Varga and Ignis followed their voices, rough with emotion, but their words firm. Then it was Aetius's turn. He stepped onto the cold obsidian. "I, Kalen, the name felt strange, renounce the name Kalen. I renounce Macragi and the blood of Guilliman. My honor and my arms belong to the Ordo Xenos. I swear the long vigil." As the last word left his mouth, a new figure stepped from the shadows. It was not an Astartes. It was a man, his face a web of augmetics, his robes the deep, ominous black of the Inquisition. It was Inquisitor Varus, the man who had taken Aetius from his home. "You swear," Varus's dry voice crackled. "You swear to hunt the alien. You swear to kill the Xenos. This is the oath you believe you have taken. It is a lie, a necessary one for the young." He circled them, his movements slow, his presence heavier than any Astartes. "Now you will hear the true vow, the secret of our Ordo." He stopped in front of Aetius. "You are not here just to fight the alien. You are here to hide the alien. You are the wall that conceals the abyss. The Imperium believes the Xenos is a beast to be purged. You know better. You know the Xenos has logic that can tempt technology, that can surpass, and truths that can shatter the very foundations of our faith." He pointed a finger at Aetius. "Your true mission, Astartes, is not just to kill the Xenos. It is to kill the knowledge of the Xenos. You are not just warriors. You are censors. You are the redactors of history." A cold, dawning horror settled on Aetius. If a regiment of the Imperial Guard sees a Necron phalanx reanimate, Varus continued, his voice a low hiss, "you will kill the Necrons, and then you will purge the entire regiment. You will leave no witnesses. If a city welcomes the Toe greater good, you will burn the Toe, and you will burn the city, and you will blame it on insurrection. If another chapter of Astartes in their ignorance stumbles upon a truth they are not meant to know, you will correct them." "You would have us kill the Emperor's faithful," Ignis whispered, his voice trembling. "The faithful are a billion souls. Their faith is a fortress built on sand," Varus snapped. Our duty is to the Foundation, not the sand. To protect the Imperium, we must protect it from the truth. That is the true vigil. That is the oath you now swear." He gestured to the chaplain, who produced a humming needle-like tool. "This is your final mark, a physical reminder of your new loyalty. It is not a badge of honor. It is a brand of ownership." The chaplain approached Aetius. He pressed the tool not to his armor but to the exposed skin of his neck. Aetius felt a sharp, cold sting, a vibration that went straight to his bones. A high-frequency etcher was cutting into his vertebrae, inscribing a micro-symbol of the Ordo Xenos, a permanent mark on his very skeleton. "You belong to the Inquisition now, body and soul," Varys said as the tool whined. "Even in death, your skeleton will proclaim your true master." The tool retracted. Aetius felt no pain, only a profound, indelible wrongness. He was no longer a son of Ultramar. He was a tool of the Inquisition, a secret keeper, a butcher of the truth. His transformation was complete. Their final oath, taken the newly named Kill Team Aetius, was led from the crypt to the Sanctum Armoria. This was not the training vault of heretical weapons. This was the true arsenal of the Deathwatch, a place of silent, deadly purpose. The chamber was a cathedral of steel. Racks of black lacquered weapons rose into the shadows, each piece anointed by a tech marine whose robes bore the eye of the Inquisition. The air was cold and smelled of sacred oils and weapon-grade promethium. A master of the forge, his body almost entirely augmetic. His movements a silent fluid glide awaited them. He did not speak, but indicated a row of munitions lockers with a sweep of his mechadendrite. This was the arsenal of the Ordo Xenos, special issue ammunition. Aetius said, his voice low, recognizing the color-coded casings. He ran his gauntlet over a box. Hellfire. Shells packed with mutagenic acid engineered to destroy tyrannid bioforms. Kraken Cognos noted picking up another magazine. Hardened penetrator rounds designed to punch through hardened Xenos armor, effective against Necron plating. Vengeance Varga growled, his lip curling as he hefted a drum magazine. Unstable flux core, devastating against armor, and the user if the weapon is not properly maintained. A berserker's round. Choose your tools. The master of the forge finally rasped his vox a flat hiss. You are no longer standard infantry. You are surgical instruments. Select your specialty. The team split their new roles, defining their choices. Varga the Hunter moved to the combi weapons. He took a bolter with an underslung flamer perfect for clearing tunnels and overwhelming swarms. For his hip, he strapped on a heavy-toothed chainsword, its motor growling a low promise of carnage. Ignis the Storm went straight for the jump packs. They were a specialized pattern matte black and silent running, unlike the roaring packs of the Blood Angels. With them, he selected a pair of matched power swords, their fields tuned to a high flesh-shearing frequency. Cognos the Anchor moved to the heavy weapons. He passed over the heavy bolters and plasma cannons, his logical gaze settling on a weapon unique to the Deathwatch, the frag cannon. A brutal short-range shotgun of apocalyptic power capable of firing solid slugs to crack armor or a devastating widespread frag shell to annihilate infantry. He hefted it, its weight settling comfortably onto his shoulder. Aetius was last. He was the leader, the tactician. He needed precision. He moved to the sniper racks and selected a stalker pattern bolter, its long barrel, and advanced targeting scope, promising accuracy at extreme ranges. He loaded his magazines carefully, not with one type, but in a specific alternating pattern. One Kraken, one Hellfire, one Kraken. He was no longer a generalist. He was a specialist hunter. He then moved to the blades. He passed the power swords and chainswords. His eyes landed on a weapon in a small stasis field. Its blade was a dull, sickly gray-green, patterned with technology he did not recognize. A Xenophase blade. A weapon of the lost, the tech marine droned, sensing his interest. Engineered to cut through intangible matter. Effective against Necron phase shifters and warp entities. It was heretical. It was alien. It was a violation of the machine god. It was perfect. Aetius took at the hilt, cold and alien in his gauntlet. He had learned his lesson. Purity was a myth. Finally, he took 3 stasis grenades. He remembered the blur of the Drukhari witch. He would not be outpaced again. Fully armed, they were a vision in black and silver, each a different silhouette of death. Varga, the close-quarters brute, Ignis, the high-speed duelist, Cognus, the immovable firebase, and Aetius, the calculating sniper. The master of the forge nodded once, a gesture of mechanical approval. "You are armed? Your chariot awaits?" He led them to a private, darkened hangar separate from the main bays. In the center sat a ship unlike any Aetius had ever seen. It was not the bulky, noble Thunderhawk or the utilitarian Storm Raven. This was a Corvus Black Star. It was a predator. Its lines were sharp. Its black armor plated with radar-absorbent materials, its wings angled for both void and atmospheric flight. It was a blade designed for a single-purpose infiltration and assassination. Its engines were cold and silent. The assault ramp hissed open, spilling a blood-red interior light onto the deck. Kill Team Aetius walked up the ramp. There were no final words, no benedictions. There was only the mission. Aetius was the last to board, his silver arm catching the red light. He looked back once at the dark hangar of the watch fortress, his tomb and his crucible. Then he turned, and the ramp sealed with a pressurized final hiss. There was no roar of ignition, only a low rising thrum, the sound of a predator awakening. The Black Star lifted from the deck, silent as a ghost, and slid out of the hangar into the star-dusted void. There was no turning back. The hunt had begun. The silence of the Corvus Black Star's troop bay was a living thing. It was the absolute, pressurized quiet of a hunter submarine, broken only by the low, synthetic whisper of the mission slate. Aetius, his helmet locked to his gorget, stared at the flickering tactical map projected in his visor. Hive Hadria-Gerion sector. 1 billion souls. The data was sparse, corrupted. Local Astra Militarum forces, the 88th Gerion Rifles, were reporting widespread insurrection. Vox traffic was a mess of panic tales of shadow warriors and entire platoons vanishing. The Guard was fighting a ghost. "They are blind," came the watch commander's voice patched in from Talaza Prime. "The infection is in its final stage. The cult of the beaded kiss has risen. The day of ascension is near. The local forces are an irrelevance. They are containing a flood with their bare hands." The map zoomed in, painting a red circle around the central spire's generatorum, deep in the underhive. The psychic shadow is coalescing here. This is the nest. This is the patriarch. You are not a purge team. You are an excision. You will infiltrate, locate the alpha strain, and execute it. No survivors, no witnesses. The 88th Rifles cannot know you were there. The planet cannot know what was there. The Black Star, its hull cold-running, slipped through Hadria's compromised orbital net like a scalpel. They did not drop into the war zone. They inserted 20 levels above it into a darkened, abandoned transitway. The ramp hissed open. The air hit them first, a wall of fetid, overpressurized air, thick with the smell of waste, unnumbered human bodies, and the faint, sweet, cloying reek of Zeno's ichor. In the distance, Aetius could hear the faint, desperate chatter of guard-issue lasguns. "Vox channels silent," Aetius ordered, his voice a low rasp. "Motion trackers and auspex only. We are ghosts." They moved into the bowels of the hive. This was not the marble and steel of Macragge. This was a sewer, a labyrinth of rusting pipes and tunnels slick with filth. They moved for an hour, a 4-man unit of black-armored death, their silver-armed seeming to absorb the faint light. They came to a junction, a vast cistern floor. A patrol of cultists, at least 30, armed with autoguns and mining picks, was gathered around a flickering fire, their faces pale, their eyes filled with a rapturous alien devotion. At their head was a 4-armed acolyte, its hybrid features a mockery of the human form. Varga the Space Wolf tensed. His chainsword motor gave a low, hungry thrum. "A good throat ripping," he whispered on the private vox. I will take the four-armed one. Ignis, you. No, Aetius's voice was a blade. We are not a battle line. Varga turned his helmet's red eye lenses, glaring at Aetius. They are prey. We are the hunt. We are shadows, Aetius countered. Your charge will bring the entire nest down on us. This is not a brawl. He pointed to a grid of massive ventilation shafts above them. Varga, you and Ignis, take the upper route. You will be on their far side in 90 seconds. Cognos that primary steam conduit. I want a controlled rupture on my mark. Noise and confusion. We do not engage. We pass. Understood. Varga's frustration was palpable. He was a wolf being told not to bite. But he looked at Aetius at the cold certainty in his stance and nodded. Understood. Hunting. Quietly. Varga and Ignis vanished into the darkness above their movements, enhanced by their black armor, shockingly silent. Aetius and Cognos waited. Mark Aetius voxed. Cognos didn't use an explosive. He punched the conduit's pressure joint with his power fist. A localized, deafening roar of superheated steam erupted into the cistern, instantly blinding the cultists in a white, scalding cloud. They screamed, firing wildly into the mist. As they panicked, Aetius and Cognos moved along the wall, shadows within the shadow. On the far side, Varga and Ignis dropped not with a charge, but with the silent precision of assassins. Varga's combat knife, not his chainsword, found the throat of the four-armed leader. Ignis's power swords were two quick, silent flashes ending the patrol's voxcaster. Before the steam had even begun to clear, the kill team was gone, leaving 30 corpses that would not be found for days. They had not fired a single bolt. They descended deeper, the psychic pressure growing the whispers of the hive mind, scratching at their mental fortitude. They found the lair. It was a vast, excavated dome, once a primary water reservoir, now a living, pulsating cathedral of alien flesh. The walls were coated in biomass, and tens of thousands of pupating genestealers hung from the ceiling like grotesque fruit. In the center, on a throne of bone and solidified ichor, sat the patriarch. It was a monster of impossible age and size. As large as a dreadnought, its ancient purple chitin scarred and thick, its four primary arms ending in claws that could shear ceramite. Its psychic presence was not a shadow. It was a physical weight, a wave of pure, malignant intelligence that slammed into them. It was not just a beast. It was a demigod, the vanguard of the star god's hunger. It turned its massive, milky-eyed head as they entered. It had been waiting. Kill Team Aetius, said his voice straining against the psychic pressure, execute the head. The battle was not a battle. It was an explosion. Cognos opened up with his frag cannon, the thump-thump-thump of his shells obliterating the Patriarch's pure strain bodyguards. Varga charged, chainsword finally roaring to life, meeting a wave of hybrids. Aetius raised his stalker bolter. He fired. The Kraken round aimed at the beast's eye, hissed, and dissolved in a shimmer of psychic energy. The Patriarch was shielded. It shrieked a sound that cracked reality and moved. It was faster than anything Aetius had ever seen, a blur of purple death. It swatted Cognos aside like a toy, his heavy bolter flying from his grip, and charged Aetius. No, Ignis the Blood Angel met the charge. The red thirst held in check for so long was unleashed, but it was not the blind rage of the simulation. It was a pure, focused torrent of righteous fury. His twin power swords were a vortex meeting the Patriarch's claws. He was hopelessly outmatched. The monster was too strong, but he was holding it. Claws raked his armor, shredding the black plate. His jump pack exploded. But he did not fall. He looked past the monster, his eyes seeming to see something Aetius could not. Aetius, he screamed over the vox, his voice breaking with ecstatic pain. The conduit, it is the only way. I see him. I see the angel Sanguinius. He calls me home. The Patriarch's primary claws impaled him, lifting him from the ground. Ignis roared a final bloody benediction and drove both his power swords deep into the creature's neck. The monster shrieked, throwing the Blood Angel's broken body aside. It was wounded purple ichor gushing, but it was healing. The wounds were closing. Aetius stood his bolter useless. He looked at the dying monster, then at the massive, throbbing plasma pylon that fed the entire hive level, the very pylon the Patriarch had used as its throne. He had learned. He would not sacrifice his brother for nothing. Cognus Aetius yelled, running to the Iron Hand, hauling him to his feet. "Your cannon is gone. Give me your melter charges, all of them." Brother Cognus grunted, his armor sparking. "That is the primary reactor feed. It will purge the infection," Aetius said, snatching the charges. He turned to Varga, who was standing over a pile of dead hybrids. "Wolf, get him to the evac shaft." "Now," and Varga snarled. "I am finishing the mission." Aetius sprinted not away from the Patriarch, but towards it. The beast, sensing the new threat, lunged. Aetius fired his stalker bolter not at its head, but at its feet. Hellfire rounds exploding, melting the floor to momentarily slow it. He slid, slamming the melter charges onto the main conduit right beneath the creature's throne. He armed them. He ran. He threw himself towards the evac shaft as the Patriarch, roaring, realized the betrayal. Aetius Varga roared, grabbing his arm, hauling him into the shaft. "Climb." They scrambled up the rebar rungs as the countdown hit 0. Aetius did not hear the explosion. He felt it. A sun was born beneath them. A wave of pure white plasma fire, miles wide, erupted from the reservoir, vaporizing the Patriarch, the nest, the lair, and the entire sub-level in a single, silent, atomizing instant. The shockwave chased them up the shaft, a roaring, physical god of vengeance. They burst through a bulkhead, throwing themselves onto a high gantry as the firestorm vented into the open air a mile away. The kill team, 3 of them, stood overlooking the inferno. The entire lower hive, a city of tens of millions of people, was collapsing, melting, falling into the white-hot crater they had created. A single psychic scream of a million souls, innocent and infected alike, tore through the warp, a death knell so profound it made Aetius stagger. Varga stood his head, bowed his hand, clutching a wolf-tail talisman. Cognus, methodical as ever, was already field-stripping his jammed gauntlet. Aetius looked down at the fire at the mass grave he had ordered. He felt no honor. He felt no victory. He felt no remorse. He looked at his silver inquisitorial arm gleaming in the light of the burning city. He had saved the planet by sacrificing a city. He had killed millions to save billions. He had kept the secret. He keyed his vox, his voice a dead, cold rasp. "Blackstar, this is Aetius. Mission complete. The infection is purged, 1 to recover, 1 lost. The test was over. His transformation was final. The flight back to Watch Fortress Talassa Prime was conducted in the same profound silence as the journey out. The Corvus Blackstar slid into its darkened hangar, its engines whining down to a whisper. The assault ramp lowered. There was no reception. There were no chapter serfs to take their war gear, no apothecaries rushing to check their wounds. There was only the cold, ambient hum of the fortress. Aetius, Varga, and Cognus walked down the ramp, their black armor scorched, dented, and stained with the gore of the hive. The empty space in their formation where Ignis should have been was a void that seemed to draw in the light. They marched directly to the debriefing chamber. Inquisitor Varus and Watch Commander Aras were waiting, their expressions as unreadable as the stone walls. "Report," Aras commanded. "Target eliminated," Aetius stated, his voice flat. "Patriarch and primary brood nest confirmed. Purged. Method reactor overload. Collateral damage containment of hive levels 12 through 20. Estimated civilian casualties 40 million plus minus." He placed Ignis's salvaged power sword on the table. The blade was shattered, the hilt blackened. "Watch Brother Ignis KIA. He ensured the target's neutralization. His sacrifice bought the objective." Varus did not even glance at the sword. He was staring at Aetius. "Collateral damage. You purged the city." "I purged the infection," Aetius corrected, his voice as cold as the Inquisitor's. "The civilian populace was compromised or otherwise indefensible. The choice was made. The secret is kept." Varus's thin lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Indeed." Aras looked at the broken blade. "The tithe is paid. His sacrifice is noted. The vigil is eternal." He made a curt gesture of dismissal. "To the forges. Rearm, resupply. The hole in your kill team is already being filled. A new recruit from the Dark Angels arrives within the hour. Integrate him. That was all. No commendation, no prayer for the fallen. Just a casualty report and a replacement order. The mission was over. The cycle continued. Later, Aetius stood alone in his quarters, a bare, cell-like room. A tech-marine servitor was silently buffing the worst of the scorch marks from his chest plate. His helmet was off. In the reflection of his silver inquisitorial arm, he saw the face of a stranger. The man who had been Kalen was gone. He remembered the Hive City, a pillar of fire ascending to the clouds. 40 million souls. He had given the order. He had pushed the button. He had saved the planet, perhaps the sector, from a tyrannid splinter fleet. A question a ghost of his old self whispered in his mind. Was this honorable? Was this in accordance with the Codex? Aetius clenched his silver fist, the motion smooth and mechanical. The question was irrelevant. It was a luxury, a philosophical dead end. The Codex was a book of rules for winning a war. The Deathwatch was an order of principles for surviving an apocalypse. Honor was for the songs. Duty was for the dying. He had done what was necessary. The scar on his soul was just another piece of war gear. He dismissed the servitor and donned his helmet, the world turning to the cold, tactical green of his HUD. The Vox crackled. Aetius, to the briefing room, now. He walked the cold black halls, his new team members, Varga Cognus, and a black-armored stranger with the winged sword of the Unforgiven on his silver pauldron, falling in step beside him. They did not speak. They did not need to. Watch Commander Aras stood before the vast hololith. The map of the galaxy was a sea of red, flickering icons. Xenos threats, a billion fronts on a war that could never be won, only fought. Kill Team Aetius Aras rasped, not looking at them. He tossed a data slate onto the table. A Tar Watercast diplomatic vessel has been logged in the Eastern Fringe Sector Mortis. It is broadcasting a message of cooperation to 3 Imperial worlds. Aetius picked up the slate. He didn't need to read the orders. He knew them. Your Black Star is fueled, Aras said. Leave within the hour. You know the objective. Burn the ship. Silence the crew. Leave no witnesses. Ensure the lie of Imperial supremacy holds for one more day. Aetius turned. His team turned with him. They marched from the room, their heavy rhythmic footsteps the only sound. There is no glory. There are no songs sung for the watchers in the dark. There is no honor in the silent execution, no peace for the butcher of worlds. There is only the war. There is only the enemy. There is only the vigil. And the long vigil never ever ends.